thank you so much for tuning in. This is going to be a video all about phonics and reading at our school. It's going to talk about how we teach phonics, for those of you who are new to our school, what phonics is, and the reading system at our school and how it's changed. A long time ago, pre-lockdown, the staff here restarted looking at our reading system and overhauling it right from reception all the way to year 6, and we've worked really hard through lockdown and we've continued with our plans, and we're starting to put those in place, and that's including changing our home reading book system. So the books the children are going to be bringing home this year might look a bit different, and the assessment systems and the way they're sent out are going to look different as well. I'm hoping to explain some of that in this video, and Miss Maddox is putting together an email as well. But as usual, if you've got any questions, then please do let us know and we'll do our best to answer them, especially in those class talks next week for Key Stage 1. So on our school website there is already lots of information about the magic of phonics and of reading, so if you need anything, go and look there. I'm using one of the PowerPoints I've used in the past, and I'm just working through some of those slides, but I won't go into as much detail as normal because I'm sure you don't want to watch me for hours. But if you do want that information, it is on the website, and there is a full PowerPoint there of workshops, phonics workshops I've done in the past, so I hope you can find those useful as well. So this is going to focus on reading and how we teach reading. So the main way that we teach reading at school is through phonics, and there are two main aspects of learning to read. The first one, you can tell I'm a teacher because I'm going to start writing things down, is decoding, and that's what we're going to have a little think about today. Comprehension is the other, and they are really closely linked. So decoding is reading the words on the page. Comprehension is understanding. You need both of these things to be a reader. At the moment, my reception class, who had their first full day today, are better at comprehension than they are at decoding. So they can talk to me about the books they've read, I can ask them to predict, they can retell, and they're all really good skills. I can say to them, how does this person feel in this picture at the end of the day story? And they can answer that. But for 99% of them, they're not yet able to decode the words on the page. You might find some children who will find phonics particularly easy, decode things really easily, so your child might whiz through a book and you get to the end and you say, what happened in that story, or retell it for me, and they haven't got a clue what they've read, and that's because the comprehension's missing. So they must come together. It's really important your child develops both of those skills. So the phonics that we teach in school, so we teach reading through lots of different ways. We do individual reading, we do guided reading. We've just introduced a new reading system from year 2 to year 6 that Miss Neil's introduced, which is really fantastic. Pathways to read, Miss Gaskell's had a huge part in that as well. But the main way we teach in reception and year 1 is phonics and decoding. Now, there are, for those who are new to phonics, I'm sorry for those who've been here before, but for those who are new, there are 6 phonics phases, starting at phase 1, and it goes all the way to 6, and that's pretty much covers reception year 1 and year 2. Phase 1 is all about initial sounds, it's about rhyming, it's where we are in reception at the moment, and oral blending and segmenting, so being able to look at this word and say d says bed, and that's how you sound out words. Now obviously we want our reading books that go home to match that, which I'll come to shortly. Leave you in suspense for a little while longer. Phase 2 is where we start introducing letters, and we introduce them in a specific order according to letters and sounds, which has been the government guidance since about 2007. So these are the first 6 sounds, for example, that your child will be taught, and then we teach them to put them together so they know those 6 sounds, and we might then be able to read the word nip or tap or sat. And obviously then throughout phase 2 we start to introduce more and more sounds, and the children blend those into words. They also get introduced to what we call tricky words, and this is the most common tricky word. So we can't say t, it's the. It's the. We just read it all together. We don't sound those words out, and we need to be able to recognise those words. So they're really important. The phase 2 tricky words are these 5 here. Oh, 6 actually, sorry. And 2. So they're the first ones they learn. So we put those all together and we'll start reading phonetically decodable reading books. Sorry, this is a very quick whistle stop tour. Really important to note at this point that when you're saying the sounds, this for example is a k. It's not a k, because in phonics k would be that. So we call that schwaring, and we want to keep our sounds as short as possible. And I have put a video of how to pronounce your phonics sounds correctly on the school website if you want to have a look. But that's really important because I've noticed, and this is every year, not just this year, but I'll say something like, can you find the animal that begins with k? And the children can't find it. And then I'll say k, and they can. But actually we don't want them using k, we want them using k. Those really short, sharp sounds. It's a d sound, it's not a d sound. It's a s sound, not a s sound. So it's really important that we get those sounds right. So do have a look, and I'm sure your children will start correcting you. Those in year 1 and 2 will know your children love to come home and correct you. So when we get to phase 3, we start looking at digraphs. Oh, lost my lid. Digraphs are where 2 letters make one sound. So this isn't ah, it's oo. Or we have O, or we have A, and we learn to recognise those sounds as a 2 and not as 2 single letters. And we start to be able to read words like boot, coat, and rain. And in all of those words, we've got a vowel digraph in the middle. Okay, so we just slowly start to build up the children's phonics knowledge. We get more tricky words in phase 3, and we start to get he, she, we, was, you, are, more of those high frequency tricky words. Phase 4 is no new tricky words, no new sounds, only tricky words, and we start to look at things like said and what and there and here. They're all in phase 4, and we just repeat those phase 3 sounds, and that takes us roughly, give or take, to the end of reception. Then we really gets complicated and we start looking at phase 5, and phase 5 and 6 go the whole way through 1 and 2. So we're starting to look at alternative sounds. So we've just talked about A as in rain, and then we start to get A as in play. And we start to talk to the children about switch it spelling and best guess and being able to choose the right sound. In reading, that's not so important, but in writing, that's really important. The best readers are also the best spellers. The more you read, the easier you will find spelling because you'll be able to see your mistakes. So when you write play, like this, a reader will be able to see that that doesn't look right, and the best guess for an A sound at the end of the word is A-Y. Okay, so that's where reading is so important in these phases. The more experience, the more exposure you can give children to all the different sounds, because actually A can look like make, A can look like 8, A can look like grey. And when you're teaching children this, it's when you realise that English actually makes no sense, and the rules that we try to give them to help are hard. They just really don't make any sense, and there are always exceptions. So I've just said to you, best guess AY is at the end of the word, but actually if I write the word crayon, the AY is suddenly in the middle of a word. And obviously if we're writing something like playing, where we've added a suffix, that's changed and my AY suddenly in the middle, and we start to look at grammar more, which brings me to phase 6. Where phase 6 is where we're looking spelling, grammar and punctuation, as Key Stage 2 love to call it, SPAG, and that's where those suffixes will come in, and prefixes and all the other types of punctuation that children need to know. Bless them. So that's a whistle-stop tour of phonics. I know I went through that really quickly, and I apologise to our parents who are new about this, but if you've got questions, please do ask. There's lots of information online and lots of information on the website. We don't expect you to be experts, but what's really nice is your children will start to come home and teach you the phonics. So please do listen, because they are going to be the experts, especially if you've not had a child go through the school before. So that brings me on to reading, okay? In fact, actually, some reading tips of things you can go at home is what I was going to say. So once is never enough. So if you want to get your child more fluent and decoding much easier and much more fluently, read a book again. So the first time a child reads it, they might be sounding things out or stumbling or making a few errors. Read it again, they'll be better. Read it again, they'll be better. It really builds confidence. And each time in a book, you'll always find something new. So share it a few times. It's a really nice habit to get into as early as possible. Filling in those reading records is really useful. Please do look out for next steps, because staff will put next steps in there of things children can do to improve. And if you notice it's saying quite a lot, ask your child some questions. Ask your child some questions. That's a really good clue that their comprehension isn't quite where we would like it. Picking books at the right level, which is what I'm going to come on to in a minute. Comprehension is key, so it's great when a child can decode. It's great that they're amazing at phonics. If they don't know what they're reading, that will really tell as they're reading books and they can't answer those questions. And it might be that that's the progress a child makes in a term, that at the beginning of the term they were really struggling to retell a story. Really important skill. At the end of the book, say to your child, go on, what happened? Beginning, middle, end. Can they get that in the right order? And by the end of the term, your child can fly through a retell with lots of detail. That could be their progress for that term. It's a really important skill. One more time with feeling. So that second or third time they're reading with more fluently, ask them to try and give some expression. Can they use the punctuation? Can they make it funny if there's a funny ending? Can they give lots of expression if somebody's shouting? It makes a really good reader, makes a really interesting reader as well. I know it's really hard, but be patient. When a child comes to a word they can't read, give them that time, give them that space. Don't just jump in and tell them what it is. If you know it's a word like the and you can easily see that they can't sound that out, give them a little bit of help. But if we're going to be sending home phonetically decodable books, so that means they've learnt those sounds in school, so they should be able to use them. They should not be coming home with a book that's too difficult. We want every read to be a success for your child, and we don't want anyone being discouraged or being disheartened because they can't read the words on the page. That's the last thing we want. So those books will be really closely matched to where their phonics phase is, and you shouldn't find it too tricky at all. And if it is really tricky and your child is really struggling, please come in and talk to us, because it could be that that's not quite matched where we'd like it, and then they need a slightly easier book. So for everyone, reading books. So currently, or we have had in the past, a colour book band system where the children have worked their way through a range of colours as they've moved, with that aim of being a free reader. That's changing. Please don't panic. It's going to be for the best, and it's going to make such a difference to the children's reading. It really is. So it's following the expectations of the government and Ofsted. We will be sending books home that are closely matched to the child's phonics phase. So that's why at the moment the teachers are working really hard, working their socks off to make sure all the children have really accurate phonics assessments, because their reading book is going to match their phonics assessment. So they're bringing home books of the sounds they're have been taught. So it's going to match basically where their teaching is. So those 6 phases I've just talked about, if your child's with phase 2 with me, which is where we'll be in the next few weeks, the book will be a phase 2 book. And I've got an example here. If your child's phase 3, it'll be a phase 3 book, phase 4 book. So you will be able to see, because I have taken me a very long time, stuck stickers on all the books we have in school. I have had some help, the staff have been amazing, but it's taken a long time and we're still going. We are still going. So we're going to continue to use benchmarking as an in-school tracking system. So we can benchmark them in school. It won't be as much as it has been, and we can use it to check their comprehension and to see progress, but actually it's going to be their phonics that really tells us how they're moving on. So this colour that you've seen on the back, and some of them have got really clear colours on, isn't as important. It's this sticker you're looking for at the front. It has the phase, has the school name, and it has the exact sounds that are being practiced in that book. So you're going to know your child's making progress by them reading with expression, by their decoding, by them reading more fluently, and by them being able to answer those comprehension questions. So let me just show you the difference in some of these books. In fact, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see, so I'll try and explain it the best I can. So this is a phase 2 book that will go home with your child when they've been taught k, e, u and r. Notice how I said r and not r. So it's r. So when they've taught those, they will get to take home, when they've had those, they'll be able to take home this book, okay? With words that they can sound out. This is also a pink book. As you can see, this is a pink book we've always had. This is also pink, but if you look at the words in this book, and look at this page, in fact, it says, I like the blue car. So you've got phase 2, phase 4, phase 2, phase 5A, phase 3. So for a child who's reading at a pink level, the decoding in this book is really challenging. However, the story is quite repetitive. So for a child who's got a good memory, they could memorise those words, but they're not going to be able to apply them to a new book. But what it is quite a nice little story that ends with, but I love my dad's car. And there are lots of things to talk about in this book. So if we're thinking about comprehension, understanding, expression, all those other things we talked about, gorgeous book. But phonetically, it's not going to move the children on in their reading. So that had some phase 5A. Now this is a phase 5A book. You can see it's got a similar but slightly different label. This one focuses on split digraphs, our very favourite things. I didn't actually talk too much about split digraphs. Split digraphs are where, let's take make. I did use the word make. So the e is silent, but it turns the a into an a sound. So it's not m, a, k, e, make, it's m, a, k, make. So this book, basically, you teach the children this skill, you teach them this sound, and then they take a book like this home, and you can see already that a sound is in the title. So they're getting lots of opportunities, and you'll notice at the front of this book, it actually tells you, and these are really good. The front and back to the books are amazing. At the front of the book, it tells you the sounds they're practicing in this book, and like I said, there's lots of different A sounds. And at the back of the book, there's a lovely section about story comprehension, understanding, and activities you can do, and their ideas. So rather than maybe changing the book really quickly and having 5 different books a week that the child's just almost reading, not for pleasure or enjoyment, but just going through it all, there are actually activities you can do here on your 2nd or 3rd read to really improve their comprehension and their fluency. So there are lots of ways to enjoy books. These are amazing books. We have lots of different series. We have the Alpha Blocks books, we have Story World, Songbirds books, there's Big Cat books, which are written by Julia Donaldson, which are really nice. So we've got a huge range. So what you might find happens is your child brings home this book, which they can phonetically decode and read themselves, but your child might also bring home this book, and that's one you can enjoy together. And if it hasn't got our school sticker on it, that means your child's going to need a bit of help to read it, but it's a lovely story. The old school Biff, Chip and Kipper books don't follow these phonetically decodable patterns in any way, but they're gorgeous, the stories are great, and they're really worth a share together. So they could be bringing home, they will be bringing home a mix of the two, but that sticker is going to be the key for you to see what they can read independently and what they're going to need help with. But again, the comprehension in this, sometimes these stories, gorgeous, phonetically decodable, I'm sure some parents can tell you who've been there in the past, there are some that are a little bit dull. Mrs. Palmer's not a huge fan of some of the early ones of these, because they are only focusing on maybe 8 to 10 sounds, so the words are very limited, but the children can read them, so that's really important. So it's nice to have a mix. When you get up to year 1 and 2, Miss Maddox and I have spoken a lot about this. It was the same a couple of years ago when I was in year 2. Your child's going to have a book that matches their reading level they can have from school. That does not mean we are saying you can't enjoy going to the library with your child, picking out Roald Dahl books. I know a few years ago there's a group in my year 2 class who were really into reading David Walliams. Comprehension wise, they were really hard for those children. There was a lot going on, especially the Ice Monster. That is a long book, but they loved it. They were enthused by it, they were engaged by it, they had a love for reading, and they were reading for pleasure. That's really important. I'm not stopping them reading those books, but they also need to be getting these skills. They're really, really important. The reading skills, the decoding skills, they need to be doing. And I'm not saying if you're at this level you should be reading David Walliams, but reading your school reading book, but supplementing that with other books is really important. Read to your children every night. It's just as much as you can share that literacy with them is really going to help them in all sorts of areas, from their writing to their speech to their understanding of the world. Books are really, really important for your children, so don't be afraid to share ones that are too challenging, but please do use these at home so your child can build their confidence and independence in reading for themselves. Now, Miss Maddox is putting together an email which will go out to Key Stage 1 parents, which if you prefer to read that and listen to me, then that's absolutely fine. I don't mind at all. But hopefully we've explained a little bit more about how reading books are going to come home. We'll talk to the children because obviously some of them aren't going to be coming. This is actually a purple book if you look at the back colour here, but there's no way with sentences like this at the old purple level. That's if you're purple, you're sort of beginning in year 2, end of year 1, you really want to be looking at that. They're not going to match up anymore. So don't worry about colours. Colours have gone. Don't worry about aiming to be a free reader. It's not racing to get through those book ban levels. That's not helping the children at all. There'll be different incentives provided in each class rather than just moving up book ban levels. I hope that's clear. I hope you understand. You obviously got parents' evening towards the end of this half term. If you want to speak about your child specifically and their reading levels with your child's class teacher, the assessments are going on now. The phonics assessments are happening, and they will be books will be coming home really shortly. So thank you for listening. I have gone on a little bit. And for my reception parents, if you've got any more phonics questions, we'll have some in our Zoom on Monday. And then on top of that, just ask me if you've got any questions about phonics. We don't expect you to be experts in it.